Join me, Mark Windows, for Windows on the World live every Sunday 9 to 11 PM GMT. Check out our archive and programme stream at windowsontheworld.net. Welcome to the show, and yes, it's a Monday night rather than a Sunday. I actually stopped off in a lay-by to let anybody who was going to listen know that it was going to go out tonight, Monday, at 9:30 instead of Sunday, and instead of 9 o'clock tonight, which I'd already advertised. It's been a bit hectic recently, actually. We've been doing a lot of talks, and I've been compiling a lot of information. And there's a lot of information coming through to me. And I'd like to thank everyone who's sending information in, because the amount of information coming into us is very, very useful, and there's a lot of it. So keep sending it in. I just wanted to tell you really about some forthcoming dates. We've got Saturday the 12th of October. Next Saturday, 12th of October, we're at Dog Miles Hall, which is in St Dog Miles, Pembrokeshire, SA43 3ES. It's only £10 on the door for myself, Piers Corbin and Sandy Adams. We'll be there all day, and we usually carry things on in a local establishment where we can find out even more about what's going on locally, because what's going on locally is going on globally. And that's what the kind of title of tonight's show is about. It's really about this imposition that's happened all over the world, this new template of global governance we've been talking about for years. Basically, I've called this show Bolshevik Britain. We're not talking about Bolsheviks who are going to shoot us all. We're talking about an opinion corridor that we are not allowed to be outside, and the totalitarian enforcement of that opinion corridor, more on people's minds than anything else. And this global action plan, it looks to me as though is very nearly complete. So all the outliers out there, all the people who want to be outside it, well, book our talks and let's find out what we can do about it. We do have some solutions. Do come along on the 14th of October if you're in Pembroke to St Dog Miles Hall, and there's a website, stdogmiles.co.uk. On the 14th of October, which is a week today, a Monday, I'm doing a talk called Natural Law in a Post-Truth World at New Horizons in Lytham St Anne's. Just look up New Horizons, Lytham St Anne's. They've got their own website. And it's really how this new system has taken away truth and fact, and they're now contrary to the world we live in. We live in a post-truth world, and this is reflected in the judicial system and in every interaction we have with every official in every part of public life. And that's what I'm going to be talking about a bit tonight as well. Do come along to that. It's only about £3 to get in. If you're in Lytham St Anne's, Lancashire, it starts at 7:30. That's the 14th of October, Monday. Natural Law in the Post-Truth World. On the 15th, which is the Tuesday, 15th of October, Natural Law and a Post-Truth World and Remedy. I'm going to be talking about remedy in both these talks, actually, the court cases that I've won over the last couple of years. But this one on the 15th, on the Tuesday, has just been added by somebody who phoned me up a couple of weeks ago. We're having a chat, and he's booked the Patricroft Club, or the Patricroft Club. It's 1A Edison Road, Eccles, Manchester 30, M30 SAW. It's only £3 on the door. And I'm going to be exchanging a lot of the information that I've gleaned over the years of how we can still have an effect in court and how to deal with corporations. And I have had quite a lot of grounding and indeed success in dealing with councils, the police and courts. I've had to deal with things that go up to Crown Court over the past couple of years, and I can say one thing: the corruption at the top is the same as the corruption at county. There is really no difference. So it's essential to kind of arm people with facts, those people who actually want to do something about it. So on Friday the 1st of November, we're in Glastonbury Town Hall, 6 to 11 p.m. That's an evening show. It's £10 on the door. It's the bigger picture, the climate of change and the grand solar minimum, featuring myself, Sandy Adams and Piers Corbyn, and also special guest David Dubine, who's going to talk about the grand solar minimum and how we can maybe protect ourselves if we know what's going to happen. And he's going to talk about this projected grand solar minimum. We're already going into it now. There is a bit of debate as to how long it's going to last. Saturday 9th of November, the bigger picture in Brighton. Now, we've had another Brighton venue cancel on us, and I think I know who it is. If you go to an article on windowsontheworld.net, scroll down, it's called UK Venues Who Hate Truth. And we go into what's been happening with, we've had 3 or 4 bookings cancelled in Brighton, and I think it's by this same subversive group. So we know that they're operating in that area because none of our other talks have been touched at all. And why should they be? The stuff that we're putting out is in the public interest. And this is really the crux of what we're talking about tonight. This new Stasi, the new Bolshevism, call it what you want, the totalitarianism that is being imposed ever more rapidly, and the insanity that goes with it, the arming of identity groups with ridiculous amounts of power, merely to attack the majority. And that's a really important thing. And I think it's something that we'll keep coming back to, because it seems to be the major way that people are being controlled at the moment. But the UK is completely subverted, and any illusion of what the public call democracy is long gone. The arguments over Brexit and the actions of central government will continue to string the public along, and that's all that's happening in my view. And I've been looking at this a long time, and what I can see is this shadow government, this infrastructure has been put in the last 10 years, and now the public are starting to see it. And it's getting very close to completion, which is what we're going to be talking about in tonight's show. Meanwhile, the soft takeover has already happened. The mentally helpless followers of the Extinction Rebellion cult are bringing London and the country to a halt with the help of the state. The police are facilitating this fake protest, which is in reality a takeover, which has one objective: to bring in totalitarian global governance. All they're doing is helping it. And if you look at the leaked information which came from Extinction Rebellion, their main role is to basically overthrow Western governments. I mean, you couldn't make this stuff up. It's incredible. And you've got these entitled idiots who can't even think straight. When I say Bolsheviks, we're talking about comedy Bolsheviks here. We're talking about an absolute joke that nobody could have possibly predicted would ever happen in a society that's meant to be advanced, but we are devolving. However, let's carry on with this, and we're going to talk really about how this narrative of public opinion has been completely and utterly subverted. So basically, let's talk about this Extinction Rebellion cult again. A recent raid on a South London empty council building, and it was a court building. It saw the police breaking down this very fine quality door with a battering ram, which was totally unnecessary, obviously just for the cameras, in my opinion. I mean, why didn't they just pick the keys up from the council? This is one of those council buildings that's been closed down because of the so-called regeneration. Now, okay, if they've squatted it, fine, but they were storing stuff in it. Now, you can't tell me that the council didn't know about this. These places have usually got guardians in, and if they haven't, why not? This is absolutely ridiculous. The police needn't have broken that door down. That door was probably worth about $2 or $3 grand, at least, and that's if they can get another one made. All right, these buildings are coming down, But it just doesn't make sense. And the other thing was the fire engine that they had parked outside another government building, which would have had to have licenses and special permissions to even be there, and would never have been allowed to be part of a protest. You cannot do that. You can't put a fake emergency vehicle in the middle of London unless you have a little help. And that's what's a bit scary about all this, because the government have bowed to this Extinction Rebellion. The police seem to be powerless, and what it's there for is to cause friction with the public. The public are going to demand more totalitarian police state powers because these idiots are not going to stop gluing themselves to roads, ladies and gentlemen. So if the government can stop this half-hearted whinging shower of middle-class zombies, why isn't it doing it? Why is it not doing it? Why are they taking over central London? I had a friend of mine who's texted me today. He said, it's absolute joke. They're all over central London. These whinging parasites who are bringing in this new Bolshevism. And I'm not kidding when I say that, because that's where it's all going. But because this is above government, they have no real power on the global stage anymore. You know, national governments don't mean anything. Things are being controlled at a much higher level. So national governments are being bypassed. And this was all talked about in the UN documents of the late 80s and the early 90s. The UK PLC has no free will anymore. This is globalism. This is fake protests, fake leaders, fake reality. It has never been more obvious that the process is beyond political parties and well advanced. It is, though, obvious in every institution, government body, and enforced in every part of the lives of the population. This is so obvious to everybody now. Most people must be able to see this, that this illusion of democracy is merely that. It's just an illusion. And that illusion is very, very thin now. There are no journalists, no news, no protests, and no reality. The population has now been steered into complete subversion, a hijacking of the reality of everything. And the counter-revolution is run by the same elements enforcing the idiot revolution, where the half-hearted revolt in their leisure time and are steered and told what to protest about. I mean, the opposition is labelled far-right. Anything outside of it now is called far-right and alt-right. We've reported on this widely. This came out of MI5. It's deliberately put there from the intelligence services to create this fake far-right. And, of course, you're going to get a few people who will lean towards that. And you've got a whole industry now of the alt-right. And that's basically all being controlled by our business partners through America and Israel. And we've got this situation where we've got this fake alt-right media now, which is actually putting out quite a lot of truth. But in other words, if it's propaganda, you have to mix it with propaganda, with lies. And so you have people like Katie Hopkins trying to stir up race hate. And she's saying the right things to attract the right people. And we've had Tommy Robinson. All of this stuff is to create fracture points within society. These people are just puppets. Or in Hopkins' case, I think she knows what she's doing. But the thing is, I'm talking here above the level of most people. They're not going to be able to accept what I'm saying here. But really, the whole thing, when you look at it as a business plan, if you want to actually take things over, this is the way to do it. So the opposition is labelled far-right and alt-right, and it's just an accepted part of the manufactured dissent. This is manufactured dissent, a divide-and-rule strategy to polarise two sides, which in reality are both fake. The agenda carries on down the middle. The UK public have no clue what to protest about, so they have to be told. The protests against, say, the NHS closures and anything that matters has been taken over. You never hear of this anymore, by this half-hearted street theatre run by big interests, but it's staffed on the front line by idiots, and they're not even useful idiots. Look at Bradbrook and Roger Hallam. These people are actually completely and utterly banal and stupid. They wouldn't be able to organise anything, so there's no way they're organising any of this. They're talking about social engineering, basically. What they are is very gullible and dim-witted social engineers who are being backed and funded by people who know what they're doing. Very obviously. But from the People's Marches organised by the state, remember those, the People's Marches, that was all set up through the intelligence services. I even covered this when I was at the People's Voice TV. We had somebody who came in from the People's March, when everyone went and had their banners given to them, got bussed in from all over the country, had a little protest about the NHS or whatever it was, and then they went home again. This is the public interest for the common good. Everyone goes out, has their protest, gets given their banners so they know what they're protesting about, gets herded back home again, and nobody's hurt and everybody's happy. And that's what it's about. This is what we've been reporting for ages. There's nothing real going on here at all. There are no voices of dissent, as the whole of the accepted reality is false. There can be no diversity either, no diversity in opinion, because there is no diversity. That's the other thing, right? There's no diversity in opinion. You're not allowed to have diversity in opinion. Diversity is basically now just complete police control, police state, mind control, which means there is one thing you can talk about. Fake diversity, empowerment, vibrant communities, all the rest of it. And of course, we are not allowed to address anything of importance. So this week, we're going to have a good look at what non-choices are being given to the public, as far as the public servants are concerned. Now, let's get into this next bit, because I'm going to talk about public servants. I have interacted with many MPs, government bodies and parasitical NGOs, that's non-government organisations for anyone who doesn't know, and they have all one thing in common. They do nothing of any real importance. There are rafts and rafts of organisations full of gatekeepers who are not there to solve problems, but to stop problems being solved and to stop problems coming to the surface. So the public are being unheard. Everything is being buried. I mean, this is a bigger way than virtue signalling and tokenism. This is basically what's going on. We've got virtue signalling and tokenism, and I mean this, it's a much bigger way. Without those two objectives, there would be none. So we're just talking about organisations are there to be seen to do the right thing, to take the moral high ground and talk crap and tokenism. In other words, involved people who they think might be suitable minorities. There are so many of these organisations I've looked into over the years, and the whole rancid world of NGOs who either interfere where they are not needed and do nothing where they are needed. So basically, these organisations are of no use, and I've looked into so many of them. Basically, it's the shadow governance that's been talked about by the United Nations from around 1992 onwards, and referred to in documents before that from the late 80s, like Our Common Future, which was the blueprint for what's going on now. If you don't know about that, book one of our talks, we'll tell you all about it. And it was basically this new form of unstructured global governance through the principles of environmentalism. But it's totalitarianism. And we know that the people enforcing this know that this is not an environmental program. The UN clearly said so. We've got all the quotes from it. So, yeah, let's get on to this anyway, because I'll give you a good idea of what we're going to be talking about in the rest of the show. It was the report of the Commission on Global Governance from 1996. Now, some of this stuff will start to make sense with what I've been introducing in this first part of the show. The concept of global governance, I'm going to call it that, and this is what they said. There is no alternative to working together and using collective power to create a better world. Everything is about collectivism, because collectivism is the hive mind, and that is how you control people, through collectivism. You cannot have individuals coming together. You have to have a collective that's run by certain people, and that's what we're going to get onto in this show. Citizens' assemblies, ladies and gentlemen, no choice. Well, there is choice, one choice. And that's what's going to be happening all over the country now. And who brought that in? Extinction Rebellion. How come it's happening everywhere? Because it's coming in from higher up. At the global level, it says here in this concept of global governance from 1996, at the global level, governance has been viewed primarily as intergovernmental relationships. But it must now be understood as also involving non-governmental organisations. Does this start to ring a bell? Citizens' movements, Extinction Rebellion. Before that, Occupy. We've had all these organisations Reclaim the Power, Climate Camp Action. They're all a precursor to this fake protest movement that's going on now. So basically, yes, NGOs, the scourge of every nation on the planet. Not all of them, but most of them. citizens' movements, multinational corporations and the global capital market. This is what it is. This is globalist capitalism, if you want to call it that, who are running these fake protests by people who think they're anti-capitalist. The irony has not been lost on us for a long time, the listeners to this show. Interacting with these are global mass media of dramatically enlarged influence. Did you hear that? Interacting with these are global mass media of international influence. Now, that is very important, because if you look at Media Matters, the George Soros organisation, you look at any newspaper that gets any of and most of their information, where they get it from? Well, they get it from Reuters and International News International, Associated Press, all right? So the same PR stories are circulated to all the newspapers. So we don't have any journalists anymore. It carries on. There must be an agreed global framework for actions and policies to be carried out at appropriate levels. A multifaceted strategy for global governance is required. This is why your local council have no control of what's going on. This is why NGOs and community interest companies and all the rest of it, these basically hubs of local power, are running the show, because everything is being redistributed through these organisations, and that's where the power really is. I've been talking about this for a long time, and now it's absolutely obvious to anybody who looks at it. Let's carry on with what it says anyway, from 1996. This will involve reforming and strengthening the existing system of intergovernmental institutions and improving its means of collaboration with private and independent groups, public-private partnerships. We're talking here about a corporate takeover of everything, and it's happened. Let's carry on. It is our firm conclusion that the United Nations must continue to play a central role in global governance. Well, who'd have thought they had the Global Governance Summit this year? And we reported on what they said. They're basically saying that there is nothing that can be done outside of this UN Global Action Plan called the Sustainable Development Goals, which is what Extinction Rebellion and Greta Thunberg are pushing down our throats, if you read properly between the lines. It says, with its universality, it is the only forum where the governments of the world come together on an equal footing and on a regular basis to try to resolve the world's most pressing problems. Isn't that very benevolent of them? Every effort must be made to give it the credibility and resources it requires to fulfill its responsibilities. There is no longer an East to be juxtaposed against the West. Now, this is very important, because what they're trying to do here, and what's been coming in for a long time, is this idea of a multipolar front. In other words, it's not East versus West anymore. It's not a bipolar thing, it's multipolar. And this has been talked about by ex-Soviets in the last 10 to 15 years, if you know where to look. And you can still find this stuff on YouTube. They haven't kicked it off there because no one really looks at it. No one looks at how they're really governed. It's incredible. However, let's carry on. With the abandonment of communism, capitalism has become even more of an omnibus term that hides important distinctions between different ways of organising market economies. They face the pressures of globalisation at one level, and of grassroots movements, and in some cases demands for devolution, if not succession, at another. Now, what they mean here by grassroots movements is, guess what? Extinction Rebellion. What do they describe themselves as? A grassroots movement. Because they're not a grassroots movement at all. Any grassroots movement in this country would be stamped on and would never get any publicity. These are just facts. A grassroots movement would be absolutely wiped out, and people's doors would be kicked down, and they would be surveilled and monitored within everything they did. That's why we can't have a grassroots movement. We have to have individuals who will act collectively in small groups. This is what I've been talking about for ages, and it really is coming to the point now where that's what's going to happen. It carries on anyway. So has the need for integrated global approaches to their management and worldwide embrace of the discipline of sustainable development counselled by the World Commission on Environmental and Development and endorsed at the June 1992 Earth Summit. The call is for fundamental changes in the traditional patterns of development in all countries. Our common future. They used that to open this paragraph up with, but that was actually the document where a lot of this came from, which you can still buy. Our common future will depend on the extent to which people and leaders around the world develop the vision of a better world and the strategies, the institutions and the will to achieve it. Our task as a commission is to enlarge the probability of their doing so by suggesting approaches to the governance of the global, increasingly interdependent human society. What they mean there is dependent under globalism. Well, we've covered this type of documentation in our previous shows, but it's worth reiterating, as it was the template for the template that we now have. So it's really worth looking at what they were saying previously to know what they're doing now. Well, then, of course, we have the charity sector. I've really wanted to talk about this for some time, which is often and usually much worse even than these parasitic NGOs. Now, I recently called out yet another waste of space charitable trust in this country. There are a lot of them. Basically for its hypocrisy, but yet again it fell on deaf ears. I'm going to give you this as an example of something that happened recently. Last week I called this charitable trust called the Prison Reform Trust, which is meant to keep people out of the prison system and attempt to reform it. Well, I was put onto a useful idiot within this organisation. I mean a real gatekeeper, not just any old gatekeeper, this was a real one. And I gave information about the way people were being criminalised by the police and the courts, and how people were being put into prison for crimes which had been created, basically, by suppressing and destroying defence evidence. Now, go back to 2017, look at the HMIC, Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Courts, and the CPS Inspectorate, and they found that in 55.5% of all examined cases, essential defence evidence, sometimes known as unused material, was being withheld from cases. And I know all about this because I'm still trying to sort a case out that was absolutely horrendous. So I've got onto the useful idiot that I've been given a phone number in the Prison Reform Trust, and I related true stories and basically a taking down of Crime Stoppers. Anyone who listens to our shows will know that I brought down Crime Stoppers a couple of years ago, and it's basically, Crime Stoppers was being used by the police to libel and demonise people that they'd stitched up and escalated charges against them in some cases. Remember that was some PCOs put somebody on there and accused them of a hit and run, and they got put into prison. So it means that I'm surprised traffic wardens don't have access to Crime Stoppers, but Lord Ashcroft has tightened it up considerably. I had 480 people removed from Crime Stoppers overnight. So that means 480 people wanted on Friday, nobody's wanted on Monday. So in other words, they're not wanted, so why are they on there? I had Kent Crime Stoppers taken down, and the whole of the UK regional police forces no longer have regional Crime Stoppers as a result of my evidence given to Lord Ashcroft, who's chair of trustees at Crime Stoppers. So I know a bit about charitable trust because I've been communicating with them for quite some time. Now, this wasn't the only information I gave. I gave some very detailed information on other cases which have also been brought to my attention by people who could easily have ended up in prison, and some of them actually did. Now, this, along with supporting evidence of how people have been charged with and put in prison, again, for things they have not done, you would think that this may have been of some interest. So I get onto their senior programme manager at the Prison Reform Trust. And let's have a quick recap at what their website says, because I need to inform you of this if you don't know already. The Prison Reform Trust says we will influence decision makers. Oh, they can't get away from this, can they? We will influence decision makers, useful idiots, in other words, opinion formers and the public to, now get this, reduce the use of prison. That is about who goes to prison and for how long, and means only the most serious crime should result in a sentence of imprisonment. Now, so that's their objective, and I gave them information which should be of absolutely interest to them. It should be of absolutely top-notch interest to them. They work for the public benefit to further and promote improvements in the penal system in the United Kingdom and for the prevention of crime. Okay, well, I'm talking about crime farming, where the police are not turning up to real crimes, but when they turn up to a crime which they have to attend, they find defendants rather than prosecution. So they turn defence witnesses into defendants. That's what I'm trying to say. So defence witnesses then become defendants, and that's happened in even a recent case that I know of, that I went to magistrates' court over. In that case, the judge was pretty fair because they knew the people had been involved in this had been caught lying in a previous case. Many people are not so lucky, though. Now, I was patronised in this useful idiot's best kind of, oh, sorry you're a loser. Sorry to hear that voice. You know, that I'm sorry to hear this has happened to you. Well, no, that's not what I was saying. It wasn't personal. I was just giving some facts. And I made that very obvious. I said, this is nothing personal. This is just information that you really do need to act on. I want to come and see you. I can send you all the details, and I can send you everything. The crime numbers, the names of the officers involved, what happened in court, the whole of the Crime Stoppers situation, Lord Ashcroft being involved. Patronise. I then get rather kind of animated about getting this information over. And she says, you've called me on my private number and I'm finding this phone call rather aggressive. So she used the two things that change agent, waste of space idiots, useful idiots, do. They patronise you or they accuse you of being aggressive. And that's exactly what she did. So I made a call to them afterwards and stated that I wanted their chair of trustees to contact me, which he never did. Now, he's had nearly a week, so I'll give him another couple of days. I stated that I had important information and that the trust was not fulfilling its charitable objectives by the way I had been treated. Very important, that. So their chair of trustees is, wait for it, James Timpson OBE, who has failed to contact me. A man who surely knows about the injustices of the prison system. Well, he would, wouldn't he? Being head of Timpson's. James is CEO of the family retail business since 2003. That's Timpson's, who were the shoe shops, growing the Manchester-based business from 180 to 1,500 shops that trade under the Timpson, Snappy Snaps and Max Spielman brands. Now, the Prison Reform Trust also has a host of titled trustees and retired judges, no doubt dining out on this organisation. Let's have a look at another trustee of this organisation, which is going to take us on to the next section. Maksud Ahmed, OBE, another one, was appointed as advisor to the Home Office in the Faith Communities Unit in 2003. Sounds like another Majid Nawaz, really, doesn't it? Which transferred to the Communities and Local Government in 2006 and is now called, wait a minute, Preventing Extremism Division. So this Maksud Ahmed was involved with the Prevent strategy, which is about demonising people who may be susceptible to being radicalised. So this one is part of the Prevent strategy, which has just been found to be constructing secret databases with the police and local councils of people who are deemed to be vulnerable to extremism. This organisation, Prevent, is hated by Muslims and targets anyone. Now, it's going to be targeting anyone in the respect that the new threat is the rise of the far right, and that's what these Prevent idiots are saying now. So anyone who raises their voice against the council could now be deemed a domestic terrorist and being facilitated by another useful idiot, in my opinion, on a charitable trust who's been carefully selected for his, in my opinion, uselessness, right? I had someone call me recently who stated that Prevent wasn't about Islamic extremism. It's about gathering intelligence on people who may oppose the new totalitarianism. This was backed up recently with the revelation that the police had created secret databases of thousands of people already labelled as extremists through the Prevent programme. Now, how can that go hand in hand with being on the Prison Reform Trust? I think there's a conflict there if you actually look at what they're doing in reality. Rights campaigners, it says here, this is from The Guardian. All right, they have to put in some press releases now and again, which must be true. Surely, it can't all be the end of the world and climate change. Well, it is 90% of the time. Or stupid opinion pieces, or wait for it, They have the investigative journalism of Owen Jones, though, don't they? So, yeah, let them off on that. Rights campaigners have described this as utterly chilling. A secret database compiled by counter-terrorism police containing personal information about thousands of people referred to the government's controversial anti-radicalisation PREVENT programme. The PREVENT case management database is accessible to all police forces in England, Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland, and the Home Office. It's also able to request data from it according to documents sent to the human rights group Liberty, who are about as much use as a chocolate fireguard, and seen by The Guardian, who are actually much less use than a chocolate fireguard. PREVENT is a voluntary programme which aims to divert people from terrorism before they offend. The precautionary principle. Well, we thought you were going to do something, and it looked like you were because you posted hate speech online, didn't you? You said that you wanted Brexit. Up until now, it says, it was not known that police could enter details from each PREVENT referral into the PCM database, including personal details and reasons for the referral. Gracie Bradley of Liberty said it was utterly chilling that potentially thousands of people, including children, are on a secret government database because of what they're perceived to think or believed. That's why this show is called Bolshevik Britain, ladies and gentlemen, because we have a KGB, and they are basically non-government organisations or government organisations. Take your pick. So that's trustee Maksud Ahmed, OBE. A trustee of the Prison Reform Service. Yes, so he is in the best place, a charitable trust which states it wants to keep people out of prison but doesn't want to know anything about how that might be achieved. Well, that's according to my opinion, after contacting the waste of space who patronised me before becoming a victim of my information. Now, the point I'm making here is that the culture of change agents, who are merely gatekeepers for the state, has led to the shutting down of all complaint and failing to address any problems whatsoever. All the while, the agents of change are there in every position of perceived power, just waiting to shut you down with either stonewalling, which happens to a lot, and it's happened to me a lot over the years, or just psychological manipulation. The public sector is an army of subservient, self-interested, brainwashed, narcissistic, useful idiots who get paid for doing nothing. Again, my own opinion, but I am still allowed to have one, aren't I? This is very similar to the bureaucracies of communism, but with a bit of sci-fi dystopia, and administered by human robots who appear to be human but actually are not. They're human-type robots, trained into sustainable development, diversity, and being extremely vibrant. So, when the new totalitarianism hits you, you have one choice. No choice. Well, we're going to have a bit of a break now, and I'm going to actually have a word from our sponsor. We've got some new sketches coming up from Greater Thunderbird and David Actabor, and I'm going to be putting them out as sketches which stand alone, ladies and gentlemen, because I think that there's a growing audience for Greater and David. So what we're going to do now is have a little bit of an appeal from my favourite naturalist.
Mayday, mayday, mayday. Climate emergency. Only joking, it really has turned out nice again. This is the David Actabor. For many years, I have supported globalist-backed organisations, NGOs, UN lobbyists and even the BBC. I have grovelled unashamedly and sold myself out for money and fame. But now I am supporting not only climate realism, truth and fact, but also windows on the world. I am asking for your help in this, the sixth mass extinction. Sorry, old habits die hard. This wonderful sunny day. The Earth is in a stable interglacial period, and yes, it really has turned out nice again. Windows on the World works tirelessly with little support, and unlike the BBC, no funding whatsoever. I, David Actabor, now a reformed catastrophist, would like to take this opportunity to ask you, the valued listener, to help Windows on the World. Yes, to help keep the show on the road, and indeed the airwaves. Do please consider making a small and even regular contribution through the PayPal button on the homepage at windowsontheworld.net.
That was very good, David. If you weren't such a proven liar, I would believe you are really supporting our work. But something tells Excuse me?
Oh, please, can you untie me? I won't do any more propaganda for the BBC. I promise. I won't tell any more lies.
Well, David, not yet. We need you to make a few more confessions. Remember that me, Greta Thunderbird, and my puppet sister never forgive, never forget.
Can I still do my after-dinner work?
No.
Can I please increase my carbon footprint by flying to a nice sunny place?
No.
Oh, go on.
That's it from Climate Matters with me, Greta Thunderbird. Please help win those on the world.
Oh, can you untie me so I can have a biscuit?
No.
Oh. Mayday, mayday, mayday.
Word from our sponsor there, Sir David Attenborough, and of course Greta Thunderbird, the more intelligent sister of the other one, who seems to be developing a bit of a career for herself. And there's a little bit of speculation as to who is playing the part, if indeed she is playing a part, which I refute entirely. This is a real personality. This is the real, well, okay, we can't say it's the real sister of Greta, but it's Greta is the real sister of the world's most famous climate activist. Let's put it that way. And yes, if you can help us, please do. I'm travelling around a lot at the moment, actually, and it would really help to get a few more people who make maybe monthly contributions, because the overheads are skyrocketing. Yes. I need to keep myself in tuna and chickpeas, ladies and gentlemen. Only joking. Let's get back to it now. Let's get back to it. We're going to talk about how this stuff is now implemented locally. We were talking last week about livability. Now, the useful idiot from a borough in northeast London called Waltham Forest is Clyde Lokes, who was cabinet member for the environment, who is now deputy leader of the whole of Waltham Forest Council. Now, this man was disliked by pretty much everyone in the borough. Nobody knows where he came from. About 10 to 15 years ago, he appeared, and he's been implementing the policies of Agenda 2030, Mini Holland, basically closing 70 roads with no public consultation and no consultation for any of the so-called Mini Holland project, which was funded by Transport for London. We had Enfield, Kingston and Waltham Forest. And guess what? They won. They won the right to close all their roads off and to basically collapse all the local businesses. Everyone's a winner when you are under the UN, ladies and gentlemen. So basically, the livability has now moved to Oxford under this new banner. So it was called Mini Holland in Walthamstow. In Oxford, it's called livability. Okay. Now, what they're talking about for Oxford, this is from Jill, who was sending me stuff over the past week, and she also turned up our talk in Cheltenham on Saturday. And thanks for the information there, Jill, because this is just mirroring everything all over the country. The template is all over the place. Now, basically what they're going to do is have a citizens' assembly on climate change to bring in this livability, which is going to be some kind of public consultation, which means you've got one choice, no choice. So it says the second weekend at the Oxford Citizens' Assembly on climate change will be taking place on Saturday 19th and Sunday 20th of October. Now, I can bet you that hardly anybody locally knows about this, but Oxford seems to be inhabited with compliant climatards. And even, I think, the leader of Oxford Council, in his bohemian shirt, has been poncing around, virtue signalling about how much he cares for the environment and how everyone's got to stop driving, and basically how everyone's going to go around on bikes. Now, Oxford University is basically a sausage machine for useful idiots at a very high level, same as Cambridge. So it's not surprising that they're embracing their own slavery under the guise of environmentalism. But it says here, this is part of the Citizens' Assembly on Climate Change on their website, right? It says the 2018 Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, that's the IPCC report, warned that the current global target of 80% cut in carbon emissions by 2050 is not enough to avert catastrophic temperature change. Now, none of this is true. So they're putting it down as a fact. Can you see what's going on here? Because what they're doing is they're stating all this as fact when it's speculation. So it said it's essential that global temperature change is limited to 1.5 degrees Celsius, something we could never achieve, of course. How can you do that? Temperature changes all the time. And that rapid, far-reaching and unprecedented changes in all aspects of society are required to ensure this. Now, this is where it gets to it, right? So that separates the two issues. We're not talking about climate change here. We're talking about unprecedented changes in all aspects of society are required to ensure this. It would be impossible to do this, and it's just from the made-up consensus. That's all that's going to be happening here. Now, it carries on. Oxford will be the first UK city to hold a citizens' assembly on climate change to help address the issue of climate change and consider the measures that should be taken in Oxford. OK, let's see what it says next. Why a citizens' assembly? A citizens' assembly is a group of people who are brought together to discuss an issue or issues and reach a conclusion about what they think should happen. No, they don't think what should happen. They are instructed on how they should think, and they are told what is going to happen. That's it. This is not a citizens' assembly. This is basically an organised way of making the public agree. It says the people who are... Let's get to this. Let's see what sort of useful idiots they're going to put on it. The people who take part are chosen so they reflect the wider population. Oh, yeah, the stupid diversity manifesto. So you're going to have someone of different ethnicity, all different ethnicities there who are represented, and basically none of them are going to have a voice. But that's what they don't tell you. In terms of demographics, they're going to do, e.g. age, gender, ethnicity, social class, and sometimes relevant attitudes, e.g. preferences for a small or large state. Well, none of that's got anything to do with anything. It's not going to matter. Because, wait for it, citizens' assemblies give members of the public the time and opportunity to learn about and discuss a topic before reaching conclusions. Wait a minute, they're going to learn about it. In other words, you can't go in with your own opinion. You're going to be instructed. Assembly members are asked to make trade-offs and arrive at workable recommendations. What is the Oxford Citizens' Assembly on Climate Change? The Oxford Citizens' Assembly on Climate Change will involve a randomly selected, representative sample of 50 Oxford residents, wait for it, who will learn about climate change. So you're going to have 50 brainwashable puppets who are then going to learn about climate change as if they haven't been programmed enough through the mainstream and through the Bolshevik Broadcasting Corporation. And they're going to explore different options, no they're not, to cut carbon emissions through a combination of presentations from experts and facilitated workshops. Oh my God, the Delphi technique appears. Experts, in other words, lobbyists and facilitators, public-private kind of employees who come in and control the narrative and tell you that we need to do this because the UN said so. It carries on, as the evidence around man-made climate change is clear and overwhelming. Can you see where this is going? This is not a citizens' assembly. This is a citizens' instruction programme. This is basically getting people to repeat what the state have told them. So it's nothing to do with decision making. It will be treated as a given. So man-made climate change, although never proven, will be treated as a given. And the Assembly will not be asked to consider whether or not it is a reality. I'm going to read that to you again, because these citizens' assemblies are going to be popping up everywhere, and you're going to need to get in there and disrupt them and start having your voice heard. Because this is Bolshevism by the back door. This is scary stuff. I'm actually seeing this now, and I'm starting to get really freaked out by it, because it's beyond what I thought. It was a virus in 2015, and now it's an epidemic. I kid you not. Let me just read that to you again. As the evidence around man-made climate change is clear and overwhelming, no, it's not. It will be treated as a given. and the Assembly will not be asked to consider whether or not it is a reality. Now, that's the biggest lie on the whole website, and there are many, many more. And this now from the University of Bath. Or as they say down south, Bath. Effective campaigning by activists such as Extinction Rebellion. Well, wait a minute, I'm going to stop you there, because they're not activists, they're lobbyists, okay? Effective campaigning by lobbyists, useful idiots like Extinction Rebellion and Youth for Climate strikers has led a number of municipalities, town and district councils to declare climate emergencies. Among Extinction Rebellion's demands is that of using citizens' assemblies. Can you see how it all fits together now? Oxford, you've been programmed by idiots, through idiots, for idiots. And you are idiots because you're going to accept this. You're going to be useful idiots. Using citizens' assemblies to develop policy responses. Extinction Rebellion's demands is that of using citizens' assemblies to develop policy responses. Now, wait a minute. If we started up a movement, would any of this be happening? Would they be reinforcing our narratives with no choice in every council in the country? This is unbelievable. It's a dystopian nightmare. Oxford City Council is the first to have declared its intention to involve a citizens' assembly in making final decisions on adoption of carbon abatement measures and targets. So, the worthless, ineffective losers that glue themselves to things have been useful after all. Citizens' assemblies are a way of engaging the public in a deliberative discussion of difficult issues through a process that offers potential for well-considered recommendations. Consensus forced upon the public. You have one choice and no choice. That's what you're getting. Typically, it says they involve a stratified random sample of between 50 and 150 members of the public. Only 50 in Oxford, though. Who engage in a carefully structured exercise. No kidding there, it's going to be very carefully structured. You're going to be steered into the intended outcome. And you can't question anthropological global warming. So I recommend that that's what people do. Get yourself, be a useful idiot on these assemblies, and then subvert it when you get on. Say, no, we don't believe in man-made global warming. I'm on the thing now, you can't replace me, we've got 10 others here. That's the way to do it. Infiltration, ladies and gentlemen. The only way to deal with these basically cartoon, non-effective, absolutely banal Bolsheviks is to infiltrate them from within, because that's what they're doing to us. Yes, they're going to engage in a carefully structured exercise of learning, brainwashing, programming, and consultation with experts. They're not experts, they're lobbyists, followed by deliberation and decision-making. So being instructed is not engagement. That's the main thing, I think, yeah. So you're being instructed, this is not engagement. This considered 5 major issues, one of which was abortion, which led to the successful referendum, and 2 weekends were spent addressing climate change. This is in Ireland. This is beyond what I even thought was possible 5 years ago. Its ambitious set of 13 main recommendations, with over 80% agreement, of course, because you're going to be told that you've all agreed to start with, were unsurprisingly broad, ranging from the state should take a leading role in mitigation measures, to setting up an independent body to be given legal powers to address climate change and willingness to pay higher carbon taxes. Can you believe this? You want idiots to go on to these brainwashing programs so they can pay more taxes. Some people say this is genius, but I don't. I think it's just because the public have been so dumbed down that if they can't see through this, they'll never see through anything. It says these offer the basis for a significant shift in government policy making. Can you believe this? The Irish Climate Action Committee was set up to respond and has recently produced 42 policy recommendations, with primary one being the need for a new governance structure and a stronger mandate for setting carbon budgets. So again, it's above your national governance, a new governance structure, what I was talking about at the beginning of the show, our common future, our global common future. So let's carry on. What do local authorities thinking of adopting citizens' assemblies as a means to take policy forward need to consider? They're going to be told, no doubt about that. What are the potential benefits and challenges? The benefits citizens' assemblies offer are that they are a means to get beyond the potential gridlock of everyday politics. No kidding. One of the key reasons for Extinction Rebellion promoting them. Can you get your head around this? So you've got this so-called protest group that's now instructing these local government bodies and your local citizens' assembly. This really is, and I'll reiterate it again, it's dystopian, this. It's unbelievable. In other words, there might be disagreement about policy, so let's remove all disagreement because we're not going to talk about it as politics, it's policy. The potential gridlock of everyday politics is basically people shouting at each other over bench in the House of Commons, and people think that's democracy, so they're even taking that bit away. A means to expand, it says, beyond green groups and self-selected interested parties. Self-selected interested parties. In debating policy development for controversial issues raised by the climate emergency. Can you see what they're doing here? They're stating it all as a fact, as though it's already happening. And they haven't even got the guts to debate whether it is happening or not, because that's not an issue. You're having it anyway. Pushing forward legislation which would never pass this quickly. That's what they're doing, is it has already been decided. So the legislation behind this, all the taxation that's going to come your way, all the closure of all the roads, the higher taxing on all your energy is all been planned. There is going to be no choice given. It's all been done. But it says the potential for public credibility of the recommendations and subsequent decisions made, they can be used to engage poor and marginalised people with the issues by ensuring they are represented. How bloody patronising. That's a bit like that idiot from the Prison Reform Trust, you know. I'm sorry you're such a loser. I'm sorry you're poor. Oh, don't raise your voice. Don't be aggressive. Oh, I'm going to terminate this conversation. You know. My God. Virtue signalling will get you everywhere. It carries on. They can engage and generate other regarding perspectives. As long as it fits in with, yeah, I believe everything you're telling me. Which in particular, it says, can extend to future generations and the non-human world. Oh, we're going off planet, are we? How interesting. Are we all, does this mean the 80s TV series, which has just been remade, was a documentary? Maybe it was. Because they had the UN bowing to them, didn't they? When they took over the planet. This is mental illness showing through, basically, with a touch of UN dictatorship and removal of all your inalienable rights. Yeah, nothing authentic about predetermined outcomes here. It's fake inclusivity as well, and will only include the necessary stereotypes of race and gender. Only those who are malleable enough will be selected. The outcome is already known, so that it is of no importance whether it is a big plan or a small plan. That's what they're saying. It's as though they're going to be debating something. Experiences of citizens' assemblies and juries, it says here, have established excellent practice in ensuring authenticity through careful listening. This has been constructed as a word salad, which basically gives the neuro-linguistic programming emphasis to the right words. Excellent practice in ensuring authenticity through careful listening, respectful discussion and enabling reflection on political preferences. A word salad for you there. Well, the outcome is predetermined so they can listen as much as they like. Because it's not going to make any difference. Inclusivity is intended to be addressed, it says, by random sampling stratified by area, gender, age, education, and potentially other socio-demographic and economic criteria. Well, I identify as a climate denier. I'm an unrepresented minority. Am I allowed on? I don't think so. However, minorities, it says, can still be underrepresented. Yeah. Because the people whose voices they do not want to hear are not represented. So, additionally, inclusivity must be practiced in the style of discussion, ensuring proceedings allow for a pluralism of speech cultures that might contrast with conventional understandings of dispassionate argument. Now, this is a real word salad here. Additionally, inclusivity must be practiced in the style of discussion. In the style of discussion, yeah, but it's not a discussion. It's in the style of discussion, so it's not discussion, right? Ensuring proceedings allow for a pluralism of speech cultures. What, are we all going to be speaking different languages at the Citizens' Assembly then? That might contrast with conventional understandings of dispassionate argument. Well, does that mean you can raise your voice and call them all a bunch of arseholes? I doubt it. So there, virtue signalling, but very transparent. It says a further critical issue regards what the consequences of their recommendations will be. There could be a priori commitment by the local authority that the recommendations will be adopted if they are agreed by a supermajority, which might be as high as 80%. Well, they know it's going to be 80% because you can't disagree with it. And don't worry about it, because you will find that there's 65 to 80% in favour, because that's just the way they do it. That's what the steering of public opinion is all about. You just have to make it up. So then they go on about citizens' assemblies that have changed things all over the world. And they go on about deliberation. How can Bristol respond to climate change in order to achieve net zero emissions by 2030? Net zero by 2030. So you're all going to be going around on bikes. How are the lorries going to get in? How are they going to feed you? They're going to start eating each other, a bit like that Ocasio-Cortez woman. You remember? So we've got to eat the babies. It actually is getting a bit sinister, though, isn't it? Because these are meant to be the same species. Or are they? Dun, dun, dun. And while offering scope for ambitious and aspirational recommendations, they increase the risk of disaffection with the process if they are not followed through. Well, let's get really disaffected with this process. We need to get more than disaffected with it. This is absolutely unbelievable what's happening here. Experts recommend that those not involved directly must also have avenues for expressing their views. Yeah, it's called the Delphi technique. We hear your voice. Yeah, write down what you want. You're not getting it. That's how it works. Additionally, the actual purpose and functioning of citizens' assemblies needs to be communicated very effectively to the public in order that they are seen as a legitimate modality through which local authorities engage citizens in decision-making. Well, I had to tell you that they're not. And you've got to tell everyone that they're not as well, because this is the end of what people used to call democracy. This is Bolshevik Britain by the back door, ladies and gentlemen. We're not talking about Bolsheviks that are going to shoot us in the back of the head. They're going to shoot us in the wallet. They're going to take our property, and they're going to be nice about it until you raise your voice. And then they're going to go, I'm finding your tone rather aggressive. And they're going to put the phone down, or they're going to kick you out of the meeting. That's the new Bolshevism, ladies and gentlemen. So that's it from this show. I'm glad I got a lot of information out there. And please do help us if you can through Windows on the World, PayPal. If you can put a few quid in there, helps us get about. I'm looking forward to doing these shows up north as well. And it is growing. And thanks for listening, basically. Until we're back next week. We'll definitely do a show Sunday. Thanks to Per in Sweden, who sent me a load of stuff, most of which I want to start putting out because I need to have an extra outlet for all the extra information, so I may start doing another show. But do look forward to that on Sunday, and there'll be more Greater Thunderbird and David Actabor. So thanks for listening, everybody, and that's it from me. See you soon, if not sooner, on Windows on the World. Join me, Mark Windows, for Windows on the World live every Sunday 9 to 11 p.m. GMT. Check out our archive and program stream at windowsontheworld.net.